A Werewolf Shifter Romance by Lena, from Lena's Romance Library. Chapter 1. When Lightning Strikes. The storm had been building all evening, dark clouds rolling across the Seattle skyline like an omen. Maya Chen pressed her face against the rain-streaked window of Equilibrium, the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, watching lightning fork through the darkness 40 stories below. She'd been waiting tables here for 3 months, and tonight felt different, charged with something more than just electricity in the air. Table 12 is asking for you specifically, her manager Derek said, appearing at her elbow with his usual nervous energy. The Blackwood Industries event. Big money tonight, Maya. Don't mess this up. Maya smoothed her black uniform and grabbed her order pad, weaving through the crowded dining room toward the private section reserved for Seattle's elite. The Blackwood Industries corporate party was in full swing, men in $1,000 suits nursing aged whiskey, women draped in designer gowns that cost more than Maya's annual rent. She'd learned to navigate these events with invisible efficiency, serving the wealthy while remaining unseen herself. But as she approached table 12, something made her steps falter. Him. Even seated, he commanded attention. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in boardrooms and on magazine covers, sharp cheekbones catching the ambient lighting. His suit was immaculate, charcoal gray that probably cost more than her car, but it was his eyes that stopped her cold, pale amber, almost golden, tracking her movement with predatory focus. Damian Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries, notorious for his ruthless business tactics and equally ruthless personal reputation. Seattle's most eligible bachelor and its most feared corporate shark. Gentlemen, he was saying to his companions, that voice carrying the kind of authority that made stock prices tremble. The quarterly projections look. He stopped mid-sentence as she approached, those strange amber eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Your server this evening, Derek announced unnecessarily, practically vibrating with anxiety. Maya will take excellent care of you. Will she now? Damian's voice held dark amusement. His gaze raked over her with calculating coldness, and she felt her cheeks burn under the scrutiny. How refreshing. Another aspiring actress pretending to serve tables? The men around the table chuckled, but the sound felt forced. Maya kept her expression neutral, years of dealing with entitled customers having taught her to swallow her pride. I'm here to take your orders, sir, she said evenly, pen poised over her notepad. I'm sure you are. His smile was sharp as broken glass. Let me guess. You're just working here temporarily while pursuing your real dreams? Art? Theater? Or perhaps you're hoping to catch the attention of someone who could elevate your circumstances? The implication hung in the air like poison. Around the table, his associates shifted uncomfortably, but none dared contradict their host. Maya felt heat creep up her neck, a familiar shame she thought she'd buried years ago. I'm here to work, Mr. Blackwood, she replied, proud that her voice didn't waver. Would you like to order, or shall I come back later? Oh, she has spirit. Damian leaned back in his chair, studying her like a predator sizing up prey. Tell me, little waitress, what's your story? Single mother? Student loans? Or just another pretty girl who thought she could make it in the big city and ended up... That's enough. The words escaped her before she could stop them, sharp and clear in the sudden quiet that had fallen over their section. Every conversation had paused, all attention focused on the standoff between the billionaire and the server who dared interrupt him. Damian's eyebrows rose, genuine surprise flickering across his features. Excuse me? I said that's enough. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, but she held his gaze. You want to order food? I'll take your order. You want to psychoanalyze the help? Call a therapist? Either way, I have other tables to serve. the silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. She could practically feel Derek's career flashing before his eyes somewhere behind her. But something strange was happening to Damien's expression. The cold amusement was fading, replaced by something she couldn't identify. He stood slowly, unfolding to his full height, and Maya realized her mistake. Up close, he was massive, easily 6'4", with shoulders that strained the expensive fabric of his suit. But it wasn't his size that made her step back instinctively. It was the way he went completely, utterly still, like a predator that had just caught an unexpected scent. His nostrils flared slightly, those amber eyes widening with something that looked almost like shock. His hand gripped the back of his chair so tightly his knuckles went white. "Sir?" One of his associates ventured uncertainly. "Is everything all right?" But Damien wasn't listening. He was staring at Maya with an expression of stunned recognition, as if she'd just spoken a language he'd forgotten he knew. The color had drained from his face, leaving him looking almost vulnerable. "You?" he started, then stopped, his voice rough. "What's your name?" "Maya." The word slipped out before she could think better of it. "Maya." He repeated it like he was testing how it felt on his tongue. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. Impossible. "Mr. Blackwood?" Derek had materialized beside them, sweating through his shirt. "I am so sorry for any inconvenience. Maya, perhaps you should—" "No." Damien's voice cracked like a whip, making Derek flinch. His eyes never left Maya's face. "She stays." The storm outside chose that moment to unleash its fury, lightning illuminating the restaurant in stark white flashes. Thunder rolled across the city like the growl of some massive beast, rattling the floor-to-ceiling windows. And in that moment, as nature's power shook the building around them, Maya could have sworn she saw something inhuman flicker behind Damien Blackwood's golden eyes. Something wild, something dangerous, something that recognized her in ways that should have been impossible. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, but the charge in the air remained, crackling between them like a live wire. "Table 12, Damien said finally, his voice carefully controlled again. "Cancel our orders. We're leaving." But his gaze lingered on Maya as his party collected their things, as if memorizing every detail of her face. And when he finally turned to go, she caught his whispered words, meant for no one else. "This changes everything." As the elevator doors closed behind Seattle's most powerful man, Maya stood frozen among the abandoned wine glasses and half-finished conversations, wondering why her entire world felt like it had just shifted on its axis. Outside, the storm raged on. Chapter 2. The Stranger in the Rain. Maya's shift ended at midnight, but she found herself lingering in the empty restaurant, mechanically wiping down tables that were already spotless. Her hands shook slightly as she replayed the evening's events, Damien Blackwood's final words echoing in her mind. "This changes everything." What did that even mean? "You can go home, Maya," Derek said, appearing with her paycheck and a look of barely contained panic. "And maybe take tomorrow off. Let things cool down?" She almost laughed at the irony. Take the day off because she'd finally stood up to a bully? Because she'd refused to let some entitled billionaire humiliate her for sport? But she needed this job. Needed every shift she could get. "I'll be here tomorrow," she said firmly, grabbing her jacket from the employee closet. The elevator ride down 40 floors felt endless. When the doors opened to the parking garage, Maya stepped into a wall of humid air that still crackled with storm energy. Rain drummed against the concrete ceiling like restless fingers. Her ancient Honda sat in the employee section, looking even more pathetic next to the Porsches and Teslas that belonged to the restaurant's clientele. She was fumbling for her keys when she heard it. Footsteps echoing through the garage, too measured to be casual. Maya froze, every instinct screaming danger. The parking garage was well lit but mostly deserted at this hour, security cameras positioned at strategic intervals. She'd never felt unsafe here before, but tonight felt different. Charged. The footsteps stopped. She turned slowly, expecting to see a security guard or maybe another employee heading to their car. Instead, she found herself staring at a figure in the shadows between two concrete pillars, tall, broad-shouldered, completely still. "Hello?" Her voice echoed strangely in the space. "Is someone there?" The figure stepped forward, and her heart stopped. Not Damian Blackwood in his expensive suit, but someone else entirely. A man in dark jeans and a black t-shirt that clung to a powerful frame. Dark hair damp from rain. Stubble shadowing a jaw that looked carved from granite. But it was the eyes that made her breath catch. Pale amber, almost golden, watching her with predatory intensity. The same eyes that had stared at her across table 12. "You." The word escaped her as a whisper. He stepped closer, moving with fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman. Up close, she could see the sharp angles of his face, the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt with coiled tension. He looked different, younger somehow, more dangerous, like he'd shed a civilized mask and revealed something wild underneath. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said, his voice rougher than she remembered, lacking the polished boardroom authority. "It's not safe." Maya's grip tightened on her keys, the metal cutting into her palm. "Are you threatening me?" Something flickered across his features, surprise, maybe even hurt. "Number never." He paused, running a hand through his damp hair. "I'm trying to protect you." "From what? From me?" The admission hung between them like a live wire. Maya felt her pulse hammering in her throat as she studied his face, looking for some sign that this was an elaborate joke. But his expression was deadly serious, those amber eyes holding depths of conflict she didn't understand. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Mr. Blackwood?" "Damian." His voice was rough velvet. "Just... Damian. Damian." The name felt strange on her tongue, too intimate for a stranger. "What are you doing here?" He was quiet for so long she wondered if he'd heard her. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, careful. "You smell like rain and jasmine, like home." The observation was so unexpected, so oddly vulnerable, that Maya found herself leaning forward instead of backing away. That's a strange thing to say to someone. "I'm a strange man." His smile was self-deprecating, nothing like the cold arrogance he'd displayed upstairs. "I owe you an apology. What I said tonight, how I treated you, it was inexcusable." "Then why did you do it?" He studied her face as if memorizing every detail. "Because I was afraid." "Of me?" Maya couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "I'm a waitress, not exactly threatening." "You have no idea what you are." The words were spoken so quietly she almost missed them. Then louder. "I wanted to hurt you before you could hurt me." "It's what I do. Attack first, ask questions later. It's kept me alive in business. And now I think I've made a terrible mistake." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and wild that made her think of deep forests and moonlit nights. "I'd like to make it right." Maya found herself caught between wariness and curiosity. Everything about this situation screamed that she should get in her car and drive away as fast as possible. Billionaires didn't lurk in parking garages to apologize to waitresses. They certainly didn't look at them like they were seeing the sun for the first time. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness so profound it made her chest ache. How? she heard herself ask. "Let me take you home. Make sure you get there safely." "I can take care of myself." "I'm sure you can." His smile was soft, transforming his entire face. "But humor me. The storm's getting worse. And your car?" He glanced at her Honda with something that might have been fondness. "She's seen better days." As if summoned by his words, thunder rolled overhead, followed by the sound of rain intensifying against the concrete. Maya looked at her car, knowing he was right. The Honda had been making concerning noises for weeks, and she couldn't afford repairs. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care?" Damien was quiet for a long moment, conflict playing across his features. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because when I saw you tonight, really saw you, it felt like coming alive after being dead for years." The honesty in his words hit her like a physical blow. Maya found herself stepping closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. "That's impossible," she said. "You don't even know me. I know you stood up to me when no one else would. I know you work 2 jobs and still smile at difficult customers. I know you smell like jasmine and you're not afraid of storms." His eyes searched hers. "I know that 5 minutes in your presence has shaken everything I thought I knew about myself." The parking garage fell silent except for the distant rumble of thunder. Maya stared at this man who looked like Damien Blackwood, but felt like someone entirely different, someone raw and real and dangerously compelling. "One ride home," she said finally, "but I choose the route." His smile could have powered the city. "Whatever you say, Maya." Chapter 3. Dangerous Territory. Damien's car was exactly what Maya expected. A sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than most people's houses. But as he held the passenger door open for her, she noticed details that didn't fit the billionaire playboy image. Mud on the expensive leather seats, scratches along the door panels that looked almost like claw marks, and a faint smell of pine and earth that seemed oddly out of place. "Nice car," she said, settling into the passenger seat. "It gets me where I need to go." He slid behind the wheel with fluid grace, his large frame filling the driver's seat. Up close, she could see more inconsistencies, calluses on his hands that spoke of physical work, a small scar along his jaw, muscles that suggested regular combat training rather than casual gym visits. "Where to?" he asked, but his voice was strained, almost pained. Maya gave him her address, then watched as he gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white. "Are you okay?" "Fine." The word came out rougher than intended. He cleared his throat, started the engine. "Just tired. Long day." But as they pulled out of the parking garage into the storm-lashed streets, Maya noticed how his hands trembled slightly on the wheel, how his breathing seemed carefully controlled. The confident billionaire from upstairs was nowhere to be found. In his place sat a man who looked like he was fighting some internal battle. "You can drop me at the corner," she said as they turned onto her street. "I don't need you to see Maya." Her name was a rough whisper. "Can you roll down your window, please?" The request was so unexpected, so oddly desperate that she complied without thinking. Rain immediately began spattering the leather interior, but Damien seemed to relax slightly as the cool night air flooded the car. "Better?" she asked. He nodded, not trusting his voice. What he couldn't tell her was that her scent, jasmine and rain and something uniquely her, was driving him slowly insane. In the enclosed space of the car, it was overwhelming, triggering responses he'd spent years learning to control. His wolf was clawing at his mental barriers, demanding he claim what was his. Because she was his. He'd known it the moment her scent hit him upstairs, known it with a certainty that defied logic. His mate. the one he'd stopped believing existed. "This is me," Maya said as they pulled up to a modest apartment building in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. Damien studied the building with sharp eyes, automatically cataloging escape routes, security weaknesses, potential threats. The protective instinct was so strong it surprised him. He'd never felt the need to guard anyone before, had never understood pack members who spoke of their overwhelming drive to protect their mates. Now he understood perfectly. "Thank you," Maya said, reaching for the door handle. "For the ride, I mean. And the apology." "Maya." She turned back to him, and the sight of her face in the dim light made his chest tight. "What I said earlier, about this changing everything, I meant it. I still don't know what you mean." "Because you don't know what you are to me," he thought desperately. "You don't know that everything I've built, everything I've become, just became secondary to keeping you safe." "It means I'd like to see you again," he said instead. "Not as a customer and server, as us." Maya studied his face in the streetlight filtering through the rain. "I don't date customers. It's a rule. I'm not asking for a date." "Then what are you asking for?" Damien was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice held a vulnerability that made her heart race. "A chance to prove I'm not the man you met tonight. A chance to show you who I really am." "And who are you, really?" His smile was self-deprecating. "Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. I thought I knew, but then I walked into that restaurant and saw you and..." He shook his head. "You make me want to be better than I am." The honesty in his words hit her like a physical blow. Maya had spent years perfecting the art of reading people. It came with the territory of service work. And nothing about his expression suggested deception. Just raw, painful truth. "I should go," she said softly. "You should." But neither of them moved. The rain drummed against the car roof like restless fingers, creating an intimate cocoon around them. Maya found herself studying the sharp angles of his face, the way shadows played across his features. There was something almost otherworldly about him in the dim light, something that made her pulse quicken with equal parts attraction and wariness. "Damien," she said carefully, "what aren't you telling me?" His entire body went rigid. "What do you mean?" "You're different now than you were upstairs. Like you're two completely different people. And the way you looked at me..." She paused, searching for the right words. "It was like you recognized me. But we've never met before." For a moment, she thought he might actually tell her whatever secret he was holding. His jaw worked silently, conflict clear in his amber eyes. Then his phone rang. The sharp sound shattered the intimate atmosphere. Damien glanced at the caller ID and cursed under his breath. "I have to take this," he said, but his tone suggested he'd rather throw the phone out the window. "Go ahead." He answered with a sharp, "What?" That made Maya flinch. She couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but whatever the caller was saying made Damien's expression grow increasingly grim. "When?" he asked. Then, "How many?" And finally, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." He ended the call and sat in silence for a moment, hands clenched around the phone. "Emergency?" Maya asked. "Something like that." He turned to her, and she was startled by the pain in his eyes. "I have to go. But Maya, be careful, okay? Stay inside tonight. Don't go out alone." "Why? What's wrong?" But he was already getting out of the car, coming around to open her door. The rain soaked through his shirt in seconds, but he didn't seem to notice. "Promise me," he said as she stepped onto the sidewalk. "Stay inside tonight." The urgency in his voice made her nod automatically. I promise. Good. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see water droplets caught in his dark lashes. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he reached out and touched her face with gentle fingers. Sweet dreams, Maya. Then he was back in his car, pulling away into the storm-dark night, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with her heart racing and 1,000 unanswered questions. As his taillights disappeared around the corner, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that whatever emergency had called him away, it was connected to his warning and to her. Chapter 4. When Instincts Whisper. Maya's apartment felt smaller than usual when she finally made it inside, damp and shivering from the brief run between Damien's car and her building. She peeled off her work clothes and wrapped herself in an oversized sweater, but couldn't shake the chill that had nothing to do with the storm. Stay inside tonight. His words echoed in her mind as she made chamomile tea with hands that still trembled slightly. The urgency in his voice, the pain in his eyes when that phone call came, it all pointed to something much bigger than a simple business emergency. She curled up on her threadbare couch with her steaming mug, trying to make sense of the evening. The arrogant billionaire who'd humiliated her upstairs felt like a different person entirely from the man who'd driven her home. The way he'd looked at her, like she was something precious and fragile and absolutely essential. Maya shook her head. She was reading too much into it. Rich men didn't develop instant obsessions with waitresses, no matter how many romance novels suggested otherwise. And she certainly didn't believe in love at first sight or soulmates or any of the other fairy tale nonsense her mother used to whisper about. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Damien. Just wanted to make sure you made it inside safely. Maya stared at the message, her heart doing strange things in her chest. When had he gotten her number? Then she remembered. Employee information was accessible to restaurant patrons for special events. Still, the fact that he'd bothered to look it up. I'm fine. Inside as promised. His response came immediately. Good. Sleep well, Maya. She should have left it at that. Should have put down the phone and pretended the entire evening had been some strange dream. Instead, she found herself typing, "Are you okay? You looked upset when you left." The delay before his response was longer this time. Just business. Nothing for you to worry about. Everything okay with your company? Another pause. Not exactly the kind of business you're thinking of, but it's handled now. Maya frowned at her phone screen. What kind of business emergency happened at midnight during a thunderstorm? And why did she get the distinct impression he wasn't talking about quarterly reports or board meetings? Before she could respond, another message appeared. Maya, I know this is going to sound strange, but have you ever felt like you were meant for something different? Like the life you're living isn't quite the right fit? The question hit closer to home than she wanted to admit. She'd been feeling exactly that for months. A restless energy, a sense that she was waiting for something without knowing what it was. Sometimes. Why? Just curious. You seem like someone who was made for more than serving tables to entitled assholes like me. Despite everything, Maya found herself smiling. You weren't that bad. Okay, you were pretty terrible. But I've dealt with worse. Have you now? Tell me about the worst customer you've ever had. And somehow, she found herself settling deeper into her couch, texting back and forth with Damien Blackwood as the storm raged outside. He asked about her worst restaurant stories, her favorite foods, what she did on her days off. In return, he told her about growing up in the Pacific Northwest, his complicated relationship with his family business, his love of hiking in the mountains. Do you miss it? She texted after he mentioned spending summers in the wilderness as a kid. Being outdoors? More than I should. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating in the city. Like I need to run until my lungs burn and my heart pounds, and I can't think about anything but the ground under my feet and the wind in my face. There was something raw in his words, something that spoke to a wildness barely contained beneath his corporate exterior. Maya found herself wondering what he'd look like without the expensive suits and polished facade, what he'd be like with mud on his hands and sunlight in his hair. "When's the last time you went hiking?" she asked. "Too long. Work keeps me tied up most weekends." "That's sad." "Is it?" Everyone needs something that makes them feel alive. Something that reminds them who they are, underneath all the roles they play. The typing indicator showed he was responding, then disappeared, appeared again, then vanished. Finally, "What makes you feel alive, Maya?" She considered the question seriously. Storms like tonight, the ocean during winter, that moment right before sunrise when the whole world feels like it's holding its breath. You like dangerous things. I like real things, raw things. Most of life feels so muffled. Like everyone's walking around in costumes, playing parts they don't really understand. And you don't want to play a part? I want to know what I'm really capable of. I want to stop being afraid of taking up space in the world. There was a long pause before his next message. "You're extraordinary. I hope you know that." Maya's cheeks heated, and she was grateful he couldn't see her blush through the phone. "You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you stood up to me when everyone else was too scared to breathe. I know you work 2 jobs and still find reasons to smile. I know you see through bullshit and you're not impressed by money or status. Trust me, that makes you extraordinary in my world. Your world sounds lonely. It is. Or it was." The implication hung between them, unspoken but understood. Maya stared at her phone, heart racing. This was dangerous territory, the kind of emotional intimacy that could ruin everything. She had bills to pay, a life to build. She couldn't afford to fall for a billionaire with secrets and amber eyes that seemed to see straight through her soul. But when her phone buzzed again, she answered immediately. "I should let you sleep." "But, Maya, thank you. For tonight. For talking with me. I haven't felt this human in a long time." "Human?" Another pause. She could practically feel him choosing his words carefully. "Present. Like I exist in the moment instead of just surviving it." Maya's throat tightened. She knew that feeling, the exhaustion of getting through each day without really living it. "Good night, Damien. Sweet dreams. And Maya? Tomorrow, if you want. I'd like to show you something. Somewhere that might help you understand what I was trying to say earlier." "About what?" "About who I really am." Before she could respond, another message appeared. "Only if you want to. No pressure. Just think about it." Maya set her phone aside and stared out at the storm, rain still lashing her windows with relentless force. Everything rational in her mind screamed that she should ignore whatever invitation he was offering. Billionaires with mysterious business emergencies and strange requests about staying inside during storms were not safe territory for women trying to build stable lives. But there had been something in his voice earlier, in the vulnerability of his texts tonight. Something that called to the part of her that was tired of playing it safe. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating her small apartment in stark white relief. And for just a moment, Maya could have sworn she saw a figure standing in the street below, motionless in the rain, looking up at her window. When the darkness returned, the figure was gone. Chapter 5. The Forest's Call. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through her curtains and the sound of her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. She'd fallen asleep on the couch, still wrapped in her oversized sweater, her empty tea mug balanced precariously on the armrest. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside looking washed clean and impossibly green. But as she reached for her phone, fragments of the night before came flooding back. Damien's amber eyes, the way he'd touched her face in the rain, the figure she'd glimpsed in the street below. Had that really happened? Or had it been a dream born of too much emotional intensity and chamomile tea? Her phone showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a single text. "Good morning. I hope you slept well. If you're still interested in what I wanted to show you, I'll pick you up at noon. Dress for hiking." Demaya stared at the message, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Everything rational told her to decline, to maintain professional boundaries, to remember that this man was essentially a stranger with more secrets than answers. But the memory of his vulnerability last night, the raw honesty in his voice when he'd said she made him feel human again. Before she could talk herself out of it, she typed back, "I'll be ready." His response came immediately, as if he'd been waiting by his phone. "Thank you. This means more than you know." 3 hours later, Maya found herself standing outside her building in hiking boots she'd forgotten she owned, cargo pants, and a light jacket. She'd pulled her dark hair back in a practical ponytail and foregone makeup entirely. If Damien Blackwood was taking her hiking, she wasn't going to pretend to be anything other than herself. The black Mercedes pulled up exactly at noon, but when Damien stepped out, Maya had to do a double take. Gone was the polished businessman in his $1,000 suit. In his place stood a man in worn jeans, hiking boots, and a dark green Henley that clung to his broad shoulders. His hair was less perfectly styled, and the stubble along his jaw gave him a rugged edge that made her mouth go dry. This was the man she'd glimpsed in the parking garage. Dangerous, wild, barely contained. "You look..." He paused, his amber eyes traveling over her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Perfect. For hiking," she clarified quickly, though heat crept up her neck. "For everything." The words were spoken so quietly she almost missed them. Then louder. "Ready for an adventure?" As they drove east out of the city, Maya watched the urban landscape give way to rolling hills covered in dense forest. Damien seemed more relaxed behind the wheel today, one hand resting easily on the gear shift, classical music playing softly from the stereo. "Where are we going?" she asked as they turned onto a narrow road that wound deeper into the mountains. "Somewhere I go when I need to remember who I am." He glanced at her, and she was struck again by how different he looked in casual clothes. Younger, more approachable, but also somehow more dangerous. "It's special to me. I've never brought anyone there before." The admission sent a flutter through her chest. "Why me?" Damien was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "Because I think you'll understand it. The wildness of it." They drove in comfortable silence after that, the road climbing steadily through old-growth forest. Maya rolled down her window and breathed in the scent of pine and moss, and something indefinably wild that made her feel more awake than she had in months. "Tell me about your family," Damien said suddenly. Maya tensed slightly. Family wasn't her favorite topic. "Not much to tell. My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. I've been on my own since then." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." She studied his profile, noting the tension in his jaw. "What about yours?" "Complicated." He turned onto an even narrower dirt road, barely wide enough for the Mercedes. "My father built Blackwood Industries from nothing, turned it into an empire. But success came at a cost." "What kind of cost?" "The kind that makes you forget there's more to life than power and control." His voice carried old pain. "He died 3 years ago. Heart attack at his desk, surrounded by quarterly reports instead of family." "And now you're following in his footsteps?" Damien pulled into a small clearing and cut the engine. Through the windshield, Maya could see a trailhead marked by a weathered wooden sign. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," He turned to face her, and the raw honesty in his expression made her chest tight. I spent so many years trying to prove I was worthy of his legacy that I forgot to ask if it was what I actually wanted. What do you want? His smile was self-deprecating. Until last night, I thought I knew. Now, everything feels different. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between them. Then Damien seemed to shake himself back to the present. "Come on," he said, getting out of the car. "Let me show you something incredible." The trail wound upward through towering Douglas firs and western red cedars, their trunks so massive Maya couldn't have wrapped her arms around them. Shafts of sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating a cathedral-like atmosphere that made her want to whisper. But what struck her most was how Damien moved through the forest, with a fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman, his feet finding the quietest path without conscious thought. He belonged here in a way that was impossible to fake, like the wild places recognized him as one of their own. "You come here often," she observed. "Every chance I get." He held a low branch aside for her to pass. "This land has been in my family for generations. My great-great-grandfather bought it in the 1800s, back when Seattle was just a logging town. It's beautiful. Wait until you see where we're going." They climbed steadily for another 20 minutes, Damien occasionally pointing out wildlife tracks or interesting plants. His knowledge of the forest was encyclopedic, but more than that, it was intimate, personal, like he'd learned these woods not from books but from years of careful observation. "There," he said finally, pointing ahead, "through those trees." Maya pushed through a curtain of low-hanging branches and stopped dead. They stood at the edge of a hidden meadow, perfectly circular and carpeted with wildflowers in impossible shades of purple and gold. At its center sat a small cabin, weathered but sturdy, with smoke rising lazily from its chimney. Beyond the meadow, the forest rose up like protective walls, creating a sense of perfect isolation. But it wasn't the beauty of the place that made Maya's breath catch. It was the sense of rightness she felt standing there, like she'd been searching for this spot her entire life without knowing it. "Damien," she whispered. I know." His voice was rough with emotion. "I felt it too, the first time I saw it." She turned to look at him and found him watching her with an expression of desperate hope, as if her reaction to this place mattered more than anything in the world. "How did you know?" she asked softly. "Know what?" "That I'd love it here." His smile was gentle, sad, and full of secrets. "Because you're like me, Maya. You need wild places to feel whole." As if summoned by his words, a wolf howled somewhere in the distant forest. Long, haunting, and achingly beautiful. Maya shivered, but not from cold. Chapter 6. Secrets in the Shadows. The wolf's howl echoed through the meadow like a primal song, raising goosebumps along Maya's arms. She found herself stepping closer to Damien without conscious thought, drawn by an instinct she didn't fully understand. "Are there many wolves up here?" she asked, scanning the tree line. Damien went very still beside her, his entire body tense. "Some. They don't usually come this close to the cabin during the day." But his voice carried a strange note, almost like recognition. Maya glanced at him and was startled by the intensity of his expression as he stared toward the forest where the howl had originated. "Should we be worried?" "No." The word came out rougher than intended. He cleared his throat, forced his shoulders to relax. "They're more afraid of us than we are of them." Another howl rose from a different direction, then another, until the forest seemed alive with wild voices calling to each other across the mountains. Maya felt something stir in her chest, not fear, but a strange longing she couldn't name. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Damien turned to stare at her with an expression of pure shock. "You're not afraid?" Should I be? She tilted her head, listening to the chorus of howls with something that felt almost like homesickness. They sound lonely. Most people are terrified of wolves. Most people are terrified of things they don't understand. Maya met his gaze. But there's something about the sound that feels familiar. Like I've been hearing it in dreams my whole life. The silence that followed her words was deafening. Damien stared at her with an expression that cycled through disbelief, hope, and something that looked almost like anguish. Maya, he said carefully, has anyone ever told you that you're different? Different how? Stronger than you should be. Faster. Better instincts. His amber eyes searched her face intently. Do you ever feel like you don't quite fit in the human world? The question hit closer to home than she wanted to admit. She'd always been stronger than other girls her size, had always possessed an uncanny ability to sense danger or read people's intentions. Her night vision was better than it should be, and she'd never gotten sick, not even with common colds. Everyone feels like an outsider sometimes, she said evasively. That's not what I'm talking about, and you know it. Damien stepped closer, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his amber irises. Maya, what do you know about your parents? Your real parents? What do you mean, my real parents? But even as she asked the question, old doubts surfaced. She'd never looked much like the people who'd raised her. Different bone structure, different coloring, different everything. You said they died when you were 16. Were they your biological parents? Maya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm afternoon sun. I don't know. I never asked. They loved me, raised me. That's all that mattered. But you wondered. It wasn't a question. Damien could see the truth in her eyes, the childhood doubts she'd pushed down, the sense of not quite belonging that had followed her throughout her life. Sometimes, she admitted quietly. But it doesn't matter now. They're gone. It might matter more than you think. Damien ran a hand through his hair, clearly wrestling with some internal decision. Maya, there are things about this world, about people like us, that most humans never learn. Things that would explain why you feel different, why you're drawn to wild places, why the sound of wolves doesn't frighten you. People like us? Before he could answer, a branch snapped in the forest behind them. Both of them spun toward the sound, and Maya was surprised by her own reaction. Muscles coiled for action, senses hyper-alert, every instinct screaming danger. A man emerged from the trees, tall and broad-shouldered with graying hair and predatory grace. He wore hiking gear, but something about the way he moved suggested he was far more comfortable in these woods than any casual hiker should be. Damien, the man said, his voice carrying clear authority. We need to talk. Damien moved subtly in front of Maya, his posture protective. Marcus, what are you doing here? Looking for you. You missed the council meeting this morning. Marcus's pale eyes flicked to Maya, and she felt like a deer caught in a predator's gaze. I can see why. The meeting was postponed. Was it? Marcus smiled, but the expression held no warmth. How convenient. And who might this be? A friend, Damien said carefully. A human friend. Marcus took a step closer, and Maya caught a scent that made her skin crawl, something wild and dangerous and utterly predatory. How interesting. Tell me, does your friend know what you are, Damien? What we all are. Marcus. Damien's voice carried a warning that made Maya's pulse spike. Don't what? Tell her the truth? That the man she's hiking with could tear her throat out without breaking a sweat? Marcus laughed, but the sound was cold as winter wind. Or perhaps she already knows. Perhaps she's not as human as she appears. Maya felt the world tilt around her. What are you talking about? Maya, don't listen to him, Damien said urgently, but she was already backing away from both men. Tell me what's going on, she demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. Right now. Marcus smiled again, and this time Maya could swear his teeth looked sharper than they should. Didn't anyone ever tell you about the monsters that live in the woods, little girl? The wolves that walk on two legs and hunt under the full moon? You're insane. Am I? Marcus tilted his head, studying her with unsettling intensity. Tell me, when was the last time you were sick? When was the last time you couldn't see clearly in the dark? When was the last time your instincts were wrong about someone? Maya's mouth went dry. Every question hit home with terrifying accuracy. Leave her alone, Damien snarled, and something in his voice made both Maya and Marcus freeze. The temperature in the meadow seemed to drop 10 degrees. Damien stood perfectly still, but power radiated from him in waves that made Maya's primitive brain scream warnings. His eyes had gone completely golden, and when he spoke again, his voice carried harmonics that no human throat should produce. You will not touch her. You will not speak to her. You will leave. Now. Marcus raised his hands in mock surrender, but his smile never wavered. Of course, Alpha, but the pack is asking questions, and when they learn you found your mate, get out. The command was absolute, primal, impossible to disobey. Marcus's casual demeanor cracked slightly, revealing something wild and dangerous underneath. This isn't over, he said, backing toward the tree line. She has the right to know what she is, what you are, and if you won't tell her, he shrugged. Others will. Then he was gone, melting into the forest like smoke. Maya stared at the spot where he'd vanished, her mind reeling. Mate. Alpha. The wolves that walk on two legs. Maya. Damien's voice was gentle now, heartbroken. Please, let me explain. She turned to face him, and what she saw in his golden eyes, not amber anymore, but pure gold, confirmed every impossible suspicion that had been building since last night. You're not human, she whispered. No, he said quietly. I'm not. Chapter 7. The Truth Unveiled. Maya stood frozen in the meadow, staring at Damien's transformed eyes as her world tilted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about reality crumbled around her like sand through desperate fingers. You're a werewolf, she said, the words feeling foreign and impossible on her tongue. Shifter, Damien corrected gently. We prefer shifter. His eyes had faded back to their usual amber, but she could still see flecks of that inhuman gold swimming in their depths. Maya, please don't run. But running was exactly what every instinct in her body screamed at her to do. Except she couldn't move. Not from fear, but from something else entirely. Something that felt like recognition, like a piece of a puzzle finally clicking into place. That's why you acted so strange at the restaurant, she said slowly, pieces falling together. My scent. You kept talking about how I smelled. Damien nodded, pain flickering across his features. Shifters have enhanced senses. We can scent emotions, intentions, connections between people. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. But what I scented on you was impossible. Which was home. The word was barely a whisper. You smelled like home, like safety, like everything I'd been searching for my entire life. His hands clenched at his sides. You smelled like my mate. Maya's breath caught. Mate? Shifter's mate for life. We have one perfect match, one person whose soul calls to ours. Damien's voice was rough with emotion. Most of us never find them. I'd stopped believing mine even existed. And you think I'm... She couldn't finish the sentence. I don't think, Maya, I know. His golden eyes met hers with devastating certainty. From the moment I caught your scent, every instinct I possess has been screaming that you belong to me, that I belong to you. The intensity of his words should have sent her running. Instead, she found herself taking a step closer, drawn by something she didn't understand. But I'm human, she protested weakly. Are you? Damien asked gently. Marcus saw something in you, something that made him think otherwise. And you're not reacting the way a human would to learning about our kind. He was right. She should be screaming, calling him insane, demanding he take her back to the city. Instead, she felt oddly calm, like she'd been waiting her entire life for someone to tell her this particular truth. What did he mean about others telling me what I am? She asked. Damien's expression darkened. There are factions within the shifter community. Some believe that potential mates should be awakened to their true nature whether they want to be or not. Marcus leads one of those factions. Awakened? Maya, if you are what I think you are, you're dormant. Your shifter abilities are sleeping, suppressed by years of living in the human world. He stepped closer, and she caught that scent again. Pine and earth and something wild that made her pulse race. But they can be awakened. The question is whether you want them to be. I don't understand any of this. Maya pressed her palms against her temples, trying to process information that seemed to belong in a fantasy novel. This morning, I was a waitress. Now you're telling me I might be some kind of supernatural creature? You're still you, Damien said urgently. Nothing about who you are changes. You just understand yourself better. Understand why you've always felt different, why wild places call to you, why you can sense things others can't. Maya looked around the meadow, at the forest rising like protective walls around them, at the smoke still curling from the cabin chimney. Everything about this place felt right in ways she couldn't explain, like she'd been searching for it her whole life. If I am what you think I am, she said carefully, what happens then? Damien's smile was soft, hopeful, and heartbreaking. Then you have choices to make about what kind of life you want, what world you want to belong to. He paused. About whether you want to explore what's between us. And if I'm just human after all, then I'll take you home, and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. I'll stay away, let you live your life. But the pain in his voice suggested that particular outcome might destroy him. Maya studied his face, memorizing the sharp angles, the way sunlight caught in his dark hair, the vulnerability in his amber eyes. This man, this creature, had turned her world upside down in less than 24 hours. But instead of anger or fear, she felt something else entirely. Possibility. How would we know for sure? She asked quietly. There are ways. But Maya? His voice carried a warning. Once you know the truth, there's no going back. Your life will never be simple again. She almost laughed. My life has never been simple. I've just been pretending it was. Damien stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Are you sure? Because if you are what I think you are, if we are what I think we are, everything changes. The way you see the world, the way the world sees you. The dangers you'll face, the enemies you'll inherit just by being connected to me. What kind of dangers? Rogue shifters who don't believe in mixing bloodlines. Hunters who think our kind shouldn't exist. Political factions within the shifter community who would use you to control me. His jaw tightened. Marcus wasn't wrong about the pack asking questions. As Alpha of the Seattle territory, My choice of mate affects everyone under my protection. Alpha? Maya tested the word. You're their leader. More than that, I'm responsible for their safety, their territory, their survival. He ran a hand through his hair. It's why I've avoided serious relationships. The person I choose doesn't just become my mate. They become the pack's Luna, second in command, responsible for their well-being. The weight of that responsibility should have terrified her. Instead, Maya felt something stir in her chest. Not fear, but recognition. Like she'd been preparing for this role her entire life without knowing it. Show me, she said suddenly. Show you what? What you really are. If you want me to make an informed choice, I need to see all of you. Damien went very still. Maya, that's not... Shifting isn't something we do casually. It's intimate, vulnerable. I'm asking you to trust me with the truth. All of it. He stared at her for a long moment, conflict playing across his features. Finally, he nodded. All right, but not here. Not in the open. He gestured toward the cabin. Inside, where we'll have privacy. As they walked across the meadow toward the weathered cabin, Maya felt like she was walking toward her destiny. Whether that destiny would save her or destroy her remained to be seen. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. Chapter 8. The beast within the cabin's interior was a study in rustic comfort. Exposed wooden beams, a stone fireplace crackling with warmth, and furniture that looked handcrafted rather than store-bought. But Maya barely registered the details. Her attention was focused entirely on Damien as he moved through the space with predatory grace, lighting oil lamps and closing curtains with methodical precision. This is where you come to be yourself, she observed, watching him pause before a window that looked out toward the forest. It's the only place I can let my guard down completely. He turned to face her, and in the golden lamplight, his features looked sharper, more defined. No board meetings, no corporate politics, no pretending to be something I'm not. Maya settled onto a leather couch that smelled of pine and something indefinably wild. What are you when you're not pretending? Dangerous. The word was spoken quietly, but it carried weight. More dangerous than you can imagine. Show me. Damien studied her face for a long moment, searching for any sign of fear or doubt. Finding none, he began to unbutton his shirt with deliberate movements. Maya, once you see this, there's no unseeing it. Are you absolutely certain? I've been living half a life for years, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm tired of being afraid of the truth. He nodded and pulled his shirt over his head, revealing a torso that took her breath away. Muscle defined by physical labor rather than a gym, scars that spoke of battles fought and survived, and something else. Tattoo-like markings that seemed to shift and move in the flickering light. Pack marks, he explained, noticing her stare. They appear when we come of age, marking our place in the hierarchy. But Maya was more interested in the way he moved, the coiled tension in his shoulders, the way his skin seemed to glow in the lamplight. There was something building in the air around them, a pressure that made her pulse quicken. Damien, she said softly, what do I need to know before you shift? That the wolf is still me. Different instincts, different priorities, but still me. His amber eyes had begun to glow with that inner light again, and that he's been waiting his entire life to meet you. Will it hurt you? A smile ghosted across his lips. Number, it feels like coming home. The transformation began slowly, his breathing deepened, muscles rippling beneath skin that seemed to shimmer and flow like water. Maya watched in fascination rather than terror as his features began to change. Jaw elongating, teeth sharpening, ears shifting to points. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Still amber, still unmistakably Damien's, but wild now in ways that made something primitive in her chest respond with recognition. The change accelerated. Bones cracked and reformed, muscle and sinew rearranging themselves according to an ancient blueprint. Dark fur spread across his skin like spilled ink, and his hands, now claws, gripped the wooden floor as his body completed its transformation. Where Damien had stood moments before, a massive black wolf now crouched, easily the size of a small horse. His fur was midnight dark with silver threading through it, and those amber eyes watched her with intelligence that was purely human despite the bestial form. Maya's breath caught, but not from fear. The wolf was magnificent, powerful, graceful, and absolutely beautiful. More than that, looking at him felt like looking at a missing piece of her own soul. "You're incredible," she whispered. The wolf's ears pricked forward at her voice. Slowly, carefully, he padded closer until he was within arm's reach. Up close, she could see the individual hairs of his coat, could smell the wild scent that clung to him. Pine and earth, and something that spoke to the deepest part of her being. Without conscious thought, Maya reached out and touched his muzzle. The fur was softer than she'd expected, warm and alive beneath her fingers. The wolf went perfectly still at her touch, amber eyes closing as if savoring the contact. "I can see you," she said softly. "Still you, underneath everything." The wolf opened his eyes and stepped closer, resting his massive head against her shoulder. The gesture was so trusting, so intimate, that Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered into his fur. A low rumble vibrated through the wolf's chest. Not a growl, but something deeper, more profound. Like contentment given voice. They stayed like that for long minutes, woman and wolf, breathing in sync in the lamplight. Maya had never felt so peaceful, so complete. It was as if every restless moment of her life had been leading to this, sitting in a cabin deep in the mountains, bonding with a creature that shouldn't exist but felt more real than anything she'd ever known. Gradually, she became aware that the wolf was changing again. The shift back seemed gentler, less dramatic, fur receding and bones reshaping themselves with practiced ease. Soon, Damien knelt before her in human form, naked and vulnerable, and watching her face with desperate hope. Maya reached for a throw blanket and wrapped it around his shoulders, her hands trembling slightly as the reality of what she'd witnessed sank in. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. "Like everything finally makes sense." The words surprised her with their honesty. "Like I've been waiting my whole life to see exactly that." Relief flooded his features. "You're not afraid." "Should I be?" Most humans would be running screaming by now. Maya considered this. "I keep coming back to what you said earlier, about me not being entirely human. Do you want to find out for certain?" She looked into his amber eyes, seeing hope and fear and something that looked like desperate love. The smart thing would be to say no, to ask him to take her home, to pretend this entire day had been an elaborate dream. But Maya was tired of being smart, tired of playing it safe, tired of feeling like she was living someone else's life. "Yes," she said firmly. "But I want to understand what that means first. All of it. The pack politics, the dangers, what being your mate would actually entail." Damien's smile could have powered the city. "It means you'd be the most important thing in my world. It means I'd spend every day of my life making sure you're safe, happy, fulfilled." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It means you'd never be alone again. And the complications are significant," he admitted. "But Maya, if you are what I think you are, If we are what I think we are, we'll face them together, as equals, as partners. Outside, another wolf howl rose from the forest, long and haunting and achingly beautiful. This time, Maya felt an answering call rise in her own chest, wordless, primitive, and utterly right. Damien heard it too. His eyes widened with wonder and certainty. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we find out what you really are." Chapter 9. Awakening, the wild Maya woke to the sound of rain drumming against the cabin windows and the scent of coffee brewing over an open fire. For a moment, she felt disoriented. This wasn't her apartment, wasn't her threadbare couch. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back, and she sat up with a start. Damien stood at the kitchen counter, fully dressed in fresh clothes that must have been stored at the cabin. He looked up when she stirred, and the soft smile that crossed his face made her chest tight. "Good morning," he said, his voice still rough from sleep. "How did you rest?" Maya stretched, surprised to realize she'd slept better than she had in months. "Like I belonged here." Something flickered in Damien's amber eyes. Hope, maybe, or recognition. "You do belong here. I can feel it." She accepted the mug of coffee he offered, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. Outside, the forest was shrouded in mist that made the world look ethereal, otherworldly. "So," she said, meeting his gaze over the rim of her cup, "how exactly do we find out what I am?" "There's someone I want you to meet. Someone who can help us understand what's dormant in your bloodline." Damien settled beside her on the couch, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Her name is Elena. She's the pack's spiritual advisor, I suppose you could call her." "A shaman?" "Something like that. She has gifts that go beyond normal shifter abilities. She can see bloodlines, sense dormant traits, help guide awakenings." He paused. "She's also my grandmother." Maya nearly choked on her coffee. "Your grandmother?" "The pack isn't just a political structure, Maya. We're family, literally, in many cases." Damien's expression grew serious. "If you decide to go through with this, you need to understand what you'd be joining. It's not just about you and me. There are dozens of people whose lives would be affected by our bond." The weight of that responsibility should have terrified her. Instead, Maya felt that strange sense of rightness again, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. "Tell me about them," she said. "Your family. The pack." Damien's face softened. "There are 43 of us in the Seattle territory. Families with children, elderly members who've served the pack for decades, young adults just coming into their abilities." He set down his coffee mug, hands clasping as he leaned forward. "We're not the monsters humans think we are, Maya. We're people trying to build lives, protect our children, preserve our culture in a world that would destroy us if they knew we existed. And as Alpha, you're responsible for all of them. For their safety, their well-being, their future." His jaw tightened. "It's why my choice of mate is so significant. The Luna doesn't just support the Alpha, she leads in her own right. She's the heart of the pack while I'm the strength." Maya studied his profile, noting the tension in his shoulders, the weight he carried. "You've been doing this alone for how long?" 3 years since my father died. There was an interim Luna, Marcus's sister actually, but she..." He trailed off, pain flickering across his features. "What happened?" "She tried to challenge my authority, wanted to push the pack toward more aggressive expansion, absorption of smaller territories." Damien's voice hardened. "When I refused, she left. Took a handful of followers with her." "Is that why Marcus was so hostile yesterday?" "Partly. He's never forgiven me for driving his sister away, even though she made her own choices." Damien turned to meet Maya's gaze. "But he also represents a faction that believes alphas should only mate within established shifter bloodlines. The idea of me bonding with a dormant, or worse, a human. He shook his head. It would be seen as weakness. And that's dangerous. In our world, perceived weakness invites challenges. Other alphas testing boundaries, rogues attempting hostile takeovers, internal power struggles that could tear the pack apart. His amber eyes were steady on hers. I'm telling you this not to scare you away, but because you deserve to know what you'd be walking into. Maya set down her coffee and turned to face him fully. Damien, do you think I'm your mate? Really, truly. I know you are. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Every instinct I possess, every fiber of my being recognizes you as mine, as the other half of my soul. Then we figure out the rest as we go. Her words surprised her with their conviction. I've spent my entire life playing it safe, avoiding risks, settling for less than I deserved because it was easier. But sitting here with you, in this place... She gestured toward the mist-shrouded forest outside. This feels like the first real choice I've ever made. Damien's smile was radiant. Are you sure? I'm terrified, Maya admitted. But yes, I'm sure. I want to know what I am. I want to know if what I feel for you is real or just wishful thinking. What do you feel for me? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Maya considered lying, deflecting, protecting herself from potential heartbreak. Instead, she chose honesty. Like I've been holding my breath my entire life, and you're the first person who makes me want to breathe. She reached out, touching his face with gentle fingers, like coming home to a place I never knew I was searching for. Damien closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. Maya, I know it's impossible. We barely know each other, and what we do know should send me running. She traced the sharp line of his cheekbone. But when I look at you, when I'm near you, everything else fades away. Is that what mate bonds feel like? Yes. His voice was rough with emotion. Exactly like that. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their admission settling between them. Outside, the rain continued to fall, creating a cocoon of intimacy around the cabin. When do we meet your grandmother? Maya asked finally. This afternoon, if you're ready. But Maya... Damien caught her hand, pressing it flat against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. Once Elena confirms what you are, once the awakening begins, there's no going back. Your life will never be the same. Good, Maya said firmly. I'm ready for my life to actually begin. Damien's answering smile was fierce with pride and love, and promises she was only beginning to understand. Then let's go find out what kind of wolf has been sleeping inside you. Chapter 10. The Luna's Awakening. Elena Blackwood lived in a cabin deeper in the forest than Maya thought possible, accessible only by a winding dirt path that seemed to disappear and reappear among the towering pines. As they approached, Maya could see smoke rising from multiple chimneys and the warm glow of windows against the gray afternoon. But it was the woman herself who took Maya's breath away. Elena stood waiting on her covered porch, and despite being well into her 70s, she moved with the fluid grace that seemed to run in the Blackwood bloodline. Her silver hair was braided with small bones and feathers, and her eyes, the same amber as Damien's, held depths of wisdom that made Maya feel like a child. Grandmother, Damien said, climbing the porch steps to embrace the older woman. My boy. Elena's voice carried the hint of an accent Maya couldn't place. And this must be the one who has you walking around like a lovesick pup. Heat crept up Maya's neck, but Elena's smile was warm, welcoming. I'm Maya, she said, extending her hand. Instead of shaking it, Elena took Maya's hand in both of hers and went very still. Her amber eyes widened, then closed as if she were listening to something only she could hear. "Oh," she breathed, her grip tightening on Maya's fingers. "Oh, child assistant? No wonder." "Grandmother?" Damien stepped closer, protective instincts clearly triggered by his grandmother's reaction. Elena opened her eyes, and Maya was startled to see tears gathering in them. "She's not dormant, Damien. She's bound." "Bound?" Maya looked between them, confusion making her voice sharp. "What does that mean?" Elena released her hands but continued studying her with intense focus. "Someone suppressed your nature deliberately. Magically. Recently, I'd guess, within the last 20 years. The world seemed to tilt around Maya. That's impossible. My parents never—" "Not your parents," Elena interrupted gently. "Someone else. Someone with power and knowledge of our kind." Her expression grew grim. "Someone who wanted to hide what you are." Damien's entire body had gone rigid with tension. Who would do that, and why? That's what we need to discover. Elena gestured toward the cabin door. "Come inside. We have much to discuss." The interior of Elena's home was a fascinating mix of modern comfort and ancient mysticism. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes in languages Maya didn't recognize. Herbs hung drying from the rafters, filling the air with complex scents that made something in her chest stir restlessly. "Sit," Elena commanded, settling into a chair across from the couch where Maya and Damien had positioned themselves. "Maya, I need to know everything about your childhood. Every detail you can remember about the people who raised you. Any unusual circumstances around your adoption. Anything that seemed strange or out of place." Maya's mind raced as she tried to organize her memories. "I don't remember much from before I was 5 or 6. My parents said I was traumatized when they found me. Some kind of accident that killed my biological family." "Found you where?" "In the mountains. They were hiking, heard crying, and found me alone in the woods." Maya frowned, accessing memories she rarely examined. "I was injured," they said, "covered in blood that wasn't mine." Elena and Damien exchanged a significant look. "Go on," Elena encouraged. "They took me to the hospital, but I healed faster than the doctors expected. Social services couldn't identify me. No missing person reports, no records of any family matching my description." Maya's voice grew quieter. "My parents said it was like I'd appeared out of nowhere." "And they adopted you immediately?" "Within 6 months. They said they fell in love with me the moment they saw me." A sudden thought occurred to Maya. But there was someone else. A woman who visited sometimes when I was very young. She would bring gifts, tell me stories about magical forests and shapeshifters and ancient bloodlines. Elena leaned forward sharply. "Describe her." "Tall, elegant, with dark hair and pale eyes. She smelled like winter wind and something sharp. Pine, maybe." Maya closed her eyes, accessing buried memories. "She used to touch my forehead and sing to me in a language I didn't understand. My parents said she was a family friend, but I could tell they were afraid of her." "When did the visits stop?" "When I was about 10, around the same time I started having dreams." "What kind of dreams?" Damien asked, his voice tight with concern. "Running through forests on 4 legs, hunting with a pack, the taste of fresh blood in my mouth." Maya shivered at the memories. "I thought they were nightmares, but they felt so real." "So right." Elena nodded grimly. "The binding was beginning to fail as you reached adolescence. Your true nature was trying to assert itself." "But the dreams stopped too," Maya said. "Around the time I turned 13, they just disappeared. I felt different afterward. Muted somehow. Like someone had turned down the volume on my senses." "The woman came back," Elena said with certainty. "She reinforced the binding. But who was she? Damien demanded. And why would she suppress Maya's abilities? Elena was quiet for a long moment, her amber eyes distant. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made both Maya and Damien lean forward. I believe she was protecting you, child. From something, or someone, who would have killed you if they discovered what you truly are. What am I? Maya whispered. Elena smiled, but it was sad, tinged with old grief. You're what we call a Luna Prima, a firstborn Luna from one of the original bloodlines. Incredibly rare, incredibly powerful, and incredibly sought after by those who would use that power for their own purposes. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath her. Original bloodlines? She managed. The first shifter's child. The ones who walked with the ancient spirits, who could commune with the wild itself. Elena's voice grew reverent. There haven't been more than a handful of Luna Primas born in the last century. Most died young, murdered by those who feared their power or sought to claim it. Damien's hand found hers, gripping tight. That's why someone bound her abilities, to hide her from hunters. But the binding is failing now, Elena continued. Being near your mate, being in the territory where you belong, it's weakening the magical restraints. Soon, they'll break entirely, and your true nature will emerge. When? Maya asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Elena's smile was fierce with anticipation. Tonight, child. Under the full moon, you'll become what you were always meant to be. Outside, as if summoned by her words, a wolf howled in the distance, long, haunting, and filled with recognition. Maya felt an answering call rise in her chest, stronger now than it had ever been. Her awakening had begun. Chapter 11. Blood and Moonlight. The hours until sunset passed in a blur of preparation and revelation. Elena bustled around her cabin, gathering herbs, crystals, and items Maya couldn't begin to identify, while explaining the awakening process in terms that sounded more like ancient ritual than medical procedure. The binding was created using blood magic, Elena said, grinding something that smelled like pine and copper in a stone mortar. To break it safely, we need to use the same. Your blood, Damien's blood, and... She paused, amber eyes growing distant. The blood of your original pack. Maya looked up from the book of shifter lore Elena had given her to study. But I don't know who my original pack was. You said my family was killed. Not killed, child. Massacred. Elena's voice hardened with old rage. The Silver Moon Pack. They were guardians of the old ways, protectors of Luna Primas like yourself. 17 years ago, they were betrayed by someone they trusted, slaughtered by hunters who knew exactly when and where to strike. The words hit Maya like physical blows. 17 years ago. That's when I was found. You were 6 years old when it happened, the only survivor of a pack that had kept the old bloodline safe for centuries. Elena's hands stilled on her grinding. Your parents, your siblings, your aunts and uncles, all dead. The woman who bound your abilities, who placed you with human parents. She saved your life at the cost of everything you were meant to become. Maya felt tears threaten and force them back. She'd mourned the parents who'd raised her. But this was different. Grieving for a family she couldn't remember. A life that had been stolen from her before she'd even known what she was losing. How do we get their blood for the ritual? Damien asked quietly. He'd been tense all afternoon, protective instincts clearly triggered by every new revelation about Maya's dangerous heritage. Elena smiled grimly. I've kept it. All these years, waiting for the day a Silver Moon survivor might emerge. She moved to an ornate cabinet and withdrew a small vial filled with dark liquid. The blood of the Luna Prima bloodline, preserved by magic and moonlight. Maya stared at the vial. knowing she was looking at all that remained of her true family. Will it hurt? The awakening? Like being born, Elena said honestly. Your body will remember its true shape. But 17 years of suppression won't be undone gently. She met Maya's eyes with compassionate firmness. But you'll have Damien with you. Mate bonds can ease the transition, share the burden of transformation. What does that mean exactly? Maya asked, though part of her already suspected. It means, Damien said, his voice rough, that I'll be connected to you during the process. I'll feel what you feel, share your pain, help anchor you to who you are when the wolf takes over. The intimacy of that prospect should have terrified her. Instead, Maya felt a deep sense of rightness, like this was exactly how it was supposed to happen. And after? She asked. What changes? Elena's expression grew serious. Everything, child. Your senses will be 100 times sharper. Your strength will increase tenfold. You'll be able to shift at will, communicate with the pack mind, sense the emotions and intentions of others. She paused. And you'll never be able to live fully in the human world again. I never wanted to, Maya realized, the truth surprising her with its clarity. I've been waiting my whole life to become myself. Damien's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Are you sure? Once this happens, there's no going back. Maya looked at him, this man who'd turned her world upside down, who'd shown her magic existed and that she was part of it. His amber eyes held love and fear and desperate hope in equal measure. I've never been more sure of anything, she said firmly. Elena nodded approvingly. Then we begin at moonrise. But first, there are things you both need to understand about what comes after. They spent the remaining daylight hours learning about pack hierarchy, shifter law, and the complex politics that governed their hidden world. Maya's head spun with information about territorial disputes, inter-pack relations, and the delicate balance required to keep their existence secret from humans. As Damien's mate, you'll inherit enemies as well as allies, Elena warned. Marcus's faction will challenge your authority. Other alphas will test your strength. There are those who still hunt our kind, and a Luna Prima will be an irresistible target. Let them try, Maya said, surprising herself with the vehemence in her voice. I've been running from who I am my entire life. I'm done hiding. Elena smiled with fierce pride. Spoken like a true Luna. As the sun sank below the tree line, they moved outside to a clearing behind Elena's cabin where ancient stones formed a perfect circle. The older woman had changed into robes that seemed woven from moonbeams and shadow, her silver hair loose and flowing. The moon will reach its peak in 1 hour, she announced, arranging the ritual components at the center of the circle. Maya, you'll need to remove your human clothes. The transformation will destroy anything you're wearing. Heat crept up Maya's neck, but she nodded, moving to the edge of the clearing where Damien waited with a soft blanket. Hey, he said softly as she approached, his amber eyes warm with understanding. You don't have to be nervous. I'll be with you every step of the way. I'm not nervous, Maya realized. I'm excited. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm about to become who I was always meant to be. Damien's smile was radiant. You already are who you were meant to be. This just lets the rest of the world see it too. Maya shed her clothes without self-consciousness, the cool night air raising goosebumps along her skin. But as moonlight began to filter through the forest canopy, she felt something else. Power stirring beneath her skin, ancient and wild and utterly right. It's time, Elena called. Maya walked naked into the stone circle, feeling the weight of destiny settling around her like a mantle. Damien followed, having stripped to the waist, his skin gleaming silver in the growing moonlight. Give me your hands, Elena commanded, producing a ceremonial knife that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Maya felt no fear as the blade bit into her palm. Then Damien's. Their blood mixed and fell onto the ancient stones, which began to glow with soft, ethereal light. "Blood of the Luna Prima," Elena chanted, adding the contents of the preserved vial. "Blood of the Alpha, blood of the fallen pack. By moon and shadow, by earth and sky, let what was bound be free." The last word left her lips just as the full moon crested the trees, bathing the clearing in silver radiance. Maya felt the binding shatter like glass, and 17 years of suppressed nature came roaring back in a wave that drove her to her knees. The awakening had begun. Chapter 12. Born of silver and shadow pain exploded through Maya's body like liquid fire, every nerve ending screaming as 17 years of magical suppression shattered at once. She heard herself cry out, a sound that was part human scream, part something wilder, more primal. Then Damien's hands were on her shoulders, his presence flooding her consciousness through their newly awakened mate bond. His strength became her anchor as waves of transformation racked her body. "I'm here," his voice whispered directly into her mind, intimate and grounding. "You're not alone." Through the haze of pain, Maya felt her bones begin to shift and lengthen. Her spine curved, vertebrae popping and realigning as her body remembered its true shape. Muscles she'd never known she possessed awakened, power flooding through her limbs like electricity. But it was the awakening of her senses that nearly overwhelmed her completely. The forest erupted into impossible detail. Every leaf, every blade of grass, every insect suddenly vivid and distinct. She could smell the individual scents of dozens of creatures. Rabbits huddled in their burrows, an owl hunting high in the canopy, deer bedded down nearly a mile away. The very earth beneath her hands thrummed with life. "Breathe," Damien coached, his mental voice steady and calm even as she felt his physical pain echo her own through their bond. "Let it flow through you instead of fighting it." Maya tried to follow his advice, but the sensory overload was staggering. She could hear Elena chanting in a language that now seemed familiar, could taste the magic thick in the air, could feel the pull of every other shifter for miles around. And beneath it all, something vast and ancient stirred within her, the awakening consciousness of her wolf. "Who are you?" she found herself asking as the presence grew stronger. "I am who you have always been," came the reply, a voice like silver wind through pine boughs. "I am the part of you they could never truly bind. I am your strength, your instincts, your connection to the wild places of the world." The wolf's emergence was different from what Maya had expected. Instead of feeling like an invading force, it felt like remembering, like rediscovering a part of herself she'd forgotten existed. The consciousness wove itself seamlessly into her own, not replacing her humanity but expanding it into something richer, deeper, more complete. "That's it," Damien encouraged, his relief flowing through their bond as her struggles began to ease. "Let her in. Trust her." The physical transformation was accelerating now. Silver fur erupted across Maya's skin, thicker and more lustrous than any natural wolf's coat. Her face elongated, human features shifting into something both lupine and ethereal. Her hands became claws capable of rending steel, her teeth sharp enough to pierce armor. But when the change was complete, when she stood on 4 legs in the center of the stone circle, Maya realized she was nothing like the wolves she'd seen in nature documentaries. She was massive, nearly as large as Damien's wolf form, with fur that seemed to capture and hold moonlight. Silver patterns swirled through her coat like living artwork, and when she looked at her reflection in a nearby stream, she saw eyes that held starlight. "You're magnificent," Damien's mental voice was full of awe and love. A true Luna Prima. Elena's chanting had ceased, and the old woman stood watching with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Blessed ancestors," she whispered. "You're exactly as your mother was. Exactly as the prophecies described." Maya tried to respond and found her wolf voice for the first time. A sound like silver bells mixed with wind through ancient trees. The howl that emerged from her throat carried harmonics no ordinary wolf could produce, and she felt every shifter within a 50-mile radius respond to the call. "They know," Damien explained, his own wolf form materializing beside hers as he completed his shift. "The entire territory knows their Luna has awakened." Through the pack bond that was now blazing to life in Maya's consciousness, she could feel them. Dozens of shifters responding to her call with recognition, submission, and fierce protective love. They were her people now, her responsibility, her family. But mixed with the welcome she sensed was something else: fear, uncertainty, and from one particular direction, outright hostility. "Marcus," Damien confirmed, catching her attention shift. "He's rallying his faction." "This won't be easy, Maya. I didn't expect it to be," she replied, surprised by how natural mental communication felt. "But I'm not afraid of him anymore." And she wasn't. The awakening had done more than restore her shifter abilities. It had awakened memories, instincts, and knowledge that had been sleeping in her blood. She knew things now that she'd never learned: pack law, territorial boundaries, the ancient ways that governed shifter society. She also understood, with crystalline clarity, exactly what she was and what that meant. "You're more than just a Luna Prima." Elena's mental voice joined their conversation, the old woman's psychic abilities allowing her to speak directly to their minds. "You're the last of the Silver Moon bloodline, heir to powers that haven't been seen in generations." "What kind of powers?" Maya asked. Instead of answering directly, Elena gestured toward the forest surrounding them. "Try calling them. Not with your voice, with your will." Maya wasn't sure what the old woman meant, but she reached out with senses she was still learning to use, extending her consciousness beyond the clearing. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every wolf within miles, shifter and wild alike, turned toward their location and began moving. Not running, not hunting, but flowing through the forest like a silver tide, drawn by a compulsion they couldn't resist. "Luna Prima magic," Elena explained as the first wild wolves emerged from the tree line, their eyes reflecting moonlight as they approached the stone circle. "You can call any wolf, command any pack, unite the scattered clans under your authority." Within minutes, the clearing was filled with wolves of every size and color, all sitting in perfect silence, all focused on Maya with expressions of reverence and absolute loyalty. "This is why they wanted you dead," Damien said, his mental voice tight with new understanding. "This is why someone massacred your pack, why they bound your abilities. You're not just a Luna, you're a Luna Queen." Maya looked out at the assembled wolves, wild and shifter alike, all waiting for her command. The power thrumming through her veins was intoxicating, but also terrifying in its scope. "What am I supposed to do with this?" she asked. Elena's smile was visible even in wolf form. "Whatever needs to be done, child. Your awakening has begun, but your true journey starts now." In the distance, answering howls began to rise, not welcoming calls, but challenges. Hostile voices that spoke of conflict to come. Maya lifted her magnificent head and howled back, her voice carrying authority that made the very mountains tremble. Let them come. She was ready. Chapter 13. The challenge dawn was breaking over the forest when Maya and Damien returned to his cabin, both exhausted from the night's revelations. The awakening had drained her physically, But emotionally, Maya felt more alive than she ever had. Every breath brought new sense. Every sound carried layers of meaning she was only beginning to understand. But beneath the exhilaration was a growing sense of urgency. "How long do we have?" Maya asked as they settled on the couch, her newly enhanced senses picking up the tension radiating from Damien's body. "Before Marcus makes his move, not long." Damien pulled her against his side, and she marveled at how perfectly she fit there, how right it felt to be skin to skin with her mate. "He's been planning something for months. Your awakening just gave him the excuse he needed." Maya could feel it too now. The disturbance in the pack bonds, loyalties being tested, alliances shifting. Through her expanded awareness, she sensed groups of shifters gathering at strategic points around the territory, some in support, others with hostile intent. "Tell me about the pack law," she said. "What are his options?" "He can challenge my authority as Alpha, but he'd have to face me in single combat. Given his age and my strength, it would be suicide." Damien's jaw tightened. "More likely, he'll challenge your right to be Luna. That's where it gets complicated." "How so?" "There are ancient laws governing Luna Primas, laws that haven't been invoked in over a century." Damien's arms tightened around her. "If someone questions your bloodline, your worthiness, or your ability to lead, they can demand trials." Maya felt ice form in her stomach. What kind of trials? Tests of strength, wisdom, and loyalty. But Maya, these weren't designed for newly awakened shifters. They're brutal, potentially deadly challenges meant for Lunas who'd been training their entire lives. Through their mate bond, Maya felt Damien's fear. Not for himself, but for her. The depth of his terror at potentially losing her made her chest tight. What happens if I refuse the trials? Then the pack splits. Those who follow Marcus will break away, form their own territory, but they won't go quietly. Territorial disputes are resolved through war. His voice dropped to a whisper. And in the chaos, other alphas will move in, trying to claim our lands. The people we're meant to protect will be caught in the crossfire. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. Less than 24 hours ago, she'd been a waitress whose biggest concern was paying rent. Now the lives of dozens of people depended on choices she wasn't prepared to make. "There's something else," Damien continued reluctantly. "Something Elena didn't mention last night." "What?" "Luna Primas don't just unite packs, they can destroy them. If you fail the trials, if you're deemed unworthy, the shame reflects on me as your mate. The pack council can vote to remove me as Alpha." Maya's eyes snapped open. "They'd strip you of your position?" "More than that. They'd exile us both, mark us as rogues. We'd be hunted by every pack in the region, considered threats to be eliminated on sight." The magnitude of what she'd stepped into hit Maya like a physical blow. This wasn't just about their relationship anymore. It was about the survival of everyone they both cared about. "I won't let that happen," she said firmly. "Maya, you've been awake as a shifter for less than 8 hours. These trials, I'll find a way." She turned to face him fully, drawing strength from the love and confidence she saw in his amber eyes. "I have Luna Prima magic, right? Powers that haven't been seen in generations? Then I'll learn to use them." "In how much time? Marcus won't wait long to issue his challenge." As if summoned by his words, a howl rose from the forest. Not the welcoming calls they'd heard during the night, but something harsh and demanding. A formal challenge that made both of them tense. Damien was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. "He's here, with at least a dozen supporters." Maya joined him, peering through the glass at the figures emerging from the tree line. Marcus stood at their head, flanked by shifters she didn't recognize. all of them radiating hostility and contempt. "Damien Blackwood," Marcus called, his voice carrying supernatural authority. "Present yourself and your so-called mate. The Pack Council demands answers." "Stay behind me," Damien murmured, but Maya was already moving toward the door. "No!" Her voice carried new harmonics, the power of her awakened nature giving it weight. "If they want to challenge me, let them do it to my face." She stepped onto the cabin's porch, and the effect was immediate. Every shifter in the clearing went still, their eyes widening as they took in her transformed presence. Even in human form, power radiated from Maya like heat from a forge. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing without effort. "I hear you have concerns about my worthiness." The older shifter recovered quickly, his lip curling in disdain. "Concerns? Girl, you're an abomination. A dormant bloodline awakened by desperation, masquerading as something sacred." "Careful," Damien growled, stepping up beside her. "You're speaking to your Luna." "My Luna?" Marcus laughed harshly. "She's been awake for one night. She knows nothing of our ways, our laws, our responsibilities. She's a human playing dress-up in wolf's clothing." Maya felt anger spike through her, but with it came something else. A cold certainty that had nothing to do with emotion and everything to do with the ancient blood flowing in her veins. "You want to test my knowledge of pack law?" she asked quietly. "Fine. I invoke my right as Luna Prima to demand explanation. By what authority do you question your alpha's mate choice?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. "By the authority granted to pack elders when an alpha makes decisions that threaten the territory's survival." "And you believe my awakening threatens our survival?" "I know it does. Luna Primas are legends, girl. Fairy tales used to frighten children. There hasn't been a real one in over 2 centuries. Maya smiled, and several of Marcus's supporters took involuntary steps backward. "Then you should be honored to witness history. Unless, of course, you're too much of a coward to face what you don't understand." The challenge in her words was unmistakable. Around the clearing, shifters began to shift nervously, sensing the building confrontation. Marcus's face flushed with rage. "You dare!" "I dare everything." Maya stepped forward, power crackling around her like visible electricity. "I am Maya Silvermoon, last daughter of the Guardian bloodline, awakened Luna Prima of the Seattle territory. If you question my right to stand beside my mate, then state your challenge formally so we can settle this once and for all." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Marcus looked around at his supporters, then back at Maya. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient ritual. "I, Marcus Greystone, elder of the Seattle Pack, formally challenge the worthiness of Maya Silvermoon to serve as Luna. I demand the trials of the Silver Moon." Maya felt Damien's sharp intake of breath, felt his fear spike through their bond. But she also felt something else, the stirring of memories not her own, knowledge passed down through generations of Luna Primas who had faced similar challenges. "I accept," she said simply. The Pack Council would gather at sunset. The trials would begin under the full moon. And Maya had less than 12 hours to learn powers that legends were made of. Chapter 14. Trials by Moonlight. The ancient amphitheater carved into the mountainside had been unused for generations, but as the sun began to set, shifters emerged from every corner of the territory to witness the first Luna Prima trials in over 2 centuries. Maya stood at the edge of the stone circle, watching pack members file into the tiered seating with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern to outright hostility. "You don't have to do this," Damien said for the 1000th time, his amber eyes dark with worry. "We could leave, start over somewhere else." "And let Marcus tear the pack apart?" Maya shook her head. "These people trusted you as their alpha. They deserve better than a leader who runs when things get difficult. Through the mate bond, she felt his pride in her decision warring with his terror at potentially losing her. The trials weren't just dangerous, they were designed to be potentially fatal, ancient tests that separated true Luna Primas from pretenders. Elena appeared at Maya's other side, her weathered hands carrying items wrapped in midnight blue silk. "The trials haven't changed in 1,000 years," she said quietly. 3 tests, the trial of silver, the trial of shadow, and the trial of song. Each one will push your awakened abilities to their limits. "Tell me what to expect," Maya said, though part of her already knew. The ancestral memories awakening in her blood carried fragments of knowledge, glimpses of other Luna Primas who had faced these same challenges. The trial of silver tests your ability to command the pack bonds. You'll need to prove you can unite shifters who would rather die than follow you. Elena's expression was grim. Marcus has chosen his supporters well. Old guard traditionalists who see change as weakness. The trial of shadow? A test of your connection to the wild itself. You'll be stripped of your human form, cast into the deepest wilderness, and hunted by creatures that exist only in the spaces between worlds. Elena's amber eyes met Maya's. If your wolf isn't strong enough to protect you, if your Luna Prima magic can't call the ancient guardians to your aid... She didn't need to finish. Maya understood. And the trial of song? The most dangerous of all. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. You'll need to sing the pack's history, call forth the spirits of every Luna who came before, and bind their power to your own. But if you're not truly of the bloodline, if your claim is false, the backlash will kill you. Maya nodded, accepting the weight of what lay ahead. Around them, the amphitheater was filling with shifters from across the territory. Families with children, elderly pack members who remembered the old stories, young adults whose loyalty had yet to be tested. At the center of it all sat the pack council, 13 of the territory's most senior members arranged in a semicircle around a throne-like chair carved from black stone. Marcus occupied the place of honor as the challenge's initiator. His followers flanked around him like a war council. "Maya Silvermoon," a voice called out, echoing off the ancient stones. The speaker was an elderly woman Maya didn't recognize, her white hair braided with silver threads. "Step forward and present yourself for judgment." Maya walked into the circle's center, feeling the weight of dozens of gazes tracking her movement. In the amphitheater's heart, power thrummed through the stone beneath her feet. The accumulated energy of centuries of pack gatherings, territorial disputes, and sacred ceremonies. "I am Maya Silvermoon," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the space without effort. "Last daughter of the Silvermoon Pack, awakened Luna Prima, and chosen mate of Alpha Damien Blackwood. I stand ready to prove my worthiness to serve as Luna of the Seattle Territory." Marcus rose from his place on the council, his expression cold with satisfaction. "And I am Marcus Greystone, elder of this pack, protector of its traditions. I challenge not only your worthiness, but your very identity. Prove to us that you are what you claim to be." The elderly councilwoman, Elena had identified her as Vera Moonstone, the council's eldest member, struck a silver staff against the stone floor 3 times. The sound rang out like a bell, and power began to build in the air around them. "Let the first trial begin," Vera announced. "The trial of silver. Maya Silvermoon, you claim the right to lead this pack, to command their loyalty, to make decisions that will affect their lives and the lives of their children. Prove that you can unite us." The challenge was more complex than Maya had expected. As Vera spoke, 12 shifters stepped into the circle, all of them Marcus's most ardent supporters, their expressions ranging from contempt to outright hatred. They formed a rough circle around Maya, their combined hostility pressing against her like a physical force. "These wolves have sworn never to follow you," Marcus announced. "They would rather die than accept your authority. Yet the Luna Prima is meant to unite all wolves, regardless of personal feelings. Make them submit. Make them acknowledge you as their superior. Do this without violence, without coercion, using only the power of your bloodline." Maya looked around at the 12 hostile faces, feeling their resistance like a wall of thorns. Through the pack bonds, their emotions were sharp and cutting: disgust, fear, rage, and underneath it all, the bone-deep conviction that she was a fraud who would destroy everything they'd worked to build. "How do I reach them?" she asked herself, drawing on the ancestral memories stirring in her consciousness. The answer came not in words, but in understanding. Luna Primas didn't command through force or fear. They led through truth, showing their followers not what they wanted to hear, but what they needed to know. Maya closed her eyes and reached out with her newly awakened senses, past the surface emotions of the 12 shifters surrounding her, down to the fears and hopes that drove their hostility. What she found there broke her heart. They weren't resisting her out of malice or prejudice. They were terrified of change, of losing the stability they'd fought so hard to create, of following someone who might not be strong enough to protect them when the real dangers came. "You're afraid," she said softly, opening her eyes to meet each of their gazes in turn. "Not of me, but of what I represent. Change, risk, the possibility that everything you've built might not be enough." One of the shifters, a middle-aged man with scarred hands, snarled at her. "We don't need some half-blood pretender telling us what we feel." "No," Maya agreed. "You need a Luna who understands that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing to protect your family anyway." She stepped toward the center of their circle, and power began to flow from her. Not the commanding presence she'd used on Marcus, but something warmer, more nurturing. Luna magic in its purest form. "I know you don't trust me yet. You shouldn't. I've been awake for one day, and you've been protecting this territory for decades." Her voice carried new harmonics as her Luna Prima abilities fully engaged. "But I'm not asking you to follow me blindly. I'm asking you to let me earn the right to stand beside you." The power flowing from Maya intensified, and she felt the pack bonds beginning to resonate with something deeper than simple loyalty. The 12 shifters around her went still, their expressions shifting from hostility to confusion to something that looked almost like hope. "This is what a real Luna feels like," one of the women whispered, tears beginning to stream down her face. This is what the stories described. One by one, they began to lower their heads in submission, not from defeat, but from recognition. Maya had passed the first trial. Chapter 15. The final trial. The trial of shadow had nearly killed her. Maya emerged from the ancient forest bloodied and exhausted, her clothes torn from encounters with creatures that existed only in nightmare. For 3 hours, she had run through a realm where reality bent and twisted, hunted by shadow beasts that fed on fear and doubt. Only her connection to the wild places, her Luna Prima ability to call upon the forest's own guardians, had saved her from being consumed entirely. But she had survived. The pack had witnessed her emerge from the shadow realm transformed, power crackling around her like visible lightning, ancient spirits at her beck and call. Now came the final test. "The trial of song," Vera Moonstone announced as Maya stood once again in the amphitheater's center. The moon had reached its zenith, bathing the ancient stones in silver radiance, the most sacred and dangerous of all the trials. Around the circle, every pack member held their breath. Even Marcus's supporters looked uncertain now, having witnessed Maya's victories in the previous tests. The resistance to her lunaship was crumbling, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like awe. "Maya Silvermoon," Vera continued, "you claim to be the last daughter of the Silvermoon bloodline. Prove it. Sing the song of lineage. Call forth the spirits of every Luna Prima who came before you. Bind their power to your own and show us the true face of your heritage." Elena stepped forward, offering Maya a crystal pendant that seemed to capture and hold moonlight. "The Songstone," she explained quietly. "It will amplify your voice, but if you're not truly of the bloodline—" "I know." Maya accepted the pendant, feeling its weight settle against her chest like destiny itself. "If I'm a pretender, it will kill me." She closed her eyes and reached deep within herself, past her human consciousness, past even her wolf's awareness, down to the place where genetic memory lived. The place where the voices of her ancestors waited to be awakened. And they were there. Dozens of them, stretching back through centuries of Luna Primas who had led packs, united territories, and died protecting their people. Their voices whispered to her in languages both ancient and eternal, teaching her the words she needed to know. Maya opened her eyes and began to sing. The first notes that emerged from her throat were unlike anything the pack had ever heard. Not quite human, not quite wolf, but something that transcended both. The Songstone amplified her voice until it filled the amphitheater, each note carrying harmonics that made the very stones resonate in response. "I am the daughter of Silver Moonlight, born of the pack that guards the threshold. My mothers before me walked between worlds, bridging the wild and the civilized." As she sang, the air around Maya began to shimmer. Translucent figures started to appear in the amphitheater, the spirits of Luna Primas long dead, drawn by the song of lineage to witness their bloodline's continuation. Elena Silvermoon, who united the coastal packs. Margaret Silvermoon, who faced the first hunters. Sarah Silvermoon, who walked with the ancient spirits. Their power flows in my veins. Their wisdom guides my path. The ghostly figures grew more solid with each name Maya called, their presence making the very air hum with accumulated power. In the audience, shifters began to weep openly as they witnessed something that belonged more to legend than reality. But it was the final verse that would determine her fate. "I am Maya, last of the line, bearer of the Prima's burden. By moon and shadow, by silver and song, I claim my place as Luna of this pack." The Songstone flared with brilliant light as the spirits of her ancestors stepped forward as one. Maya felt their power flow into her, centuries of accumulated wisdom, strength, and love pouring through her consciousness like a river of liquid starlight. When the light faded, Maya stood transformed. Her hair had gained silver streaks that seemed to move with their own light. Her eyes held depths of knowledge that spoke of bloodlines stretching back to the dawn of their kind. Power radiated from her in waves that made even the strongest alphas in the audience lower their heads in instinctive submission. She was no longer just Maya the waitress, or even Maya the newly awakened shifter. She was Maya Silvermoon, Luna Prima, inheritor of her bloodline's legacy. "The trials are complete," Vera announced, her voice thick with emotion. "The spirits themselves have acknowledged Maya Silvermoon as true Luna Prima of the ancient bloodline." Marcus rose from his place on the council, his face pale with shock and something that might have been remorse. I was wrong. Forgive me, Luna. My challenge was born of ignorance and fear." Maya looked at him with eyes that held no anger, only understanding. "There's nothing to forgive, Marcus. You were protecting your pack the only way you knew how. That's exactly what a good elder should do." She turned to address the entire amphitheater, her voice carrying to every corner without effort. "I know I'm not the Luna you expected. I know my awakening has brought uncertainty, danger, changes you didn't choose. but I swear to you on the spirits of my ancestors, on the bond I share with your Alpha, that I will spend every day of my life earning the trust you've shown me tonight." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every shifter in the amphitheater rose to their feet, voices joining in a howl of acceptance that echoed off the mountains for miles around. Even Marcus's former supporters added their voices to the chorus. Damien appeared at Maya's side, his amber eyes bright with pride and love. "My Luna," he said formally, then dropped his voice to a whisper only she could hear. "My everything." Maya felt tears stream down her cheeks as the magnitude of what had just happened settled over her. She was Luna now, not just Damien's mate, but leader of 43 souls who had just pledged their lives to her protection. "What happens now?" she asked as the celebrations continued around them. "Now," Elena said, appearing with a crown of silver and moonstone that had waited centuries for its rightful owner. "You begin the real work. Leading the pack, protecting the territory, preparing for the challenges ahead." "What challenges?" Elena's expression grew serious. "Other packs have felt your awakening, child. Some will come seeking alliance, others will test your strength. There are still hunters in the world, and ancient enemies who remember what Luna Primus are capable of." Maya accepted the crown, feeling its weight settle on her brow like a mantle of responsibility. "Let them come. I'm done running from who I am." As if summoned by her words, a howl rose from the distant mountains, not from their territory, but from somewhere far beyond their borders. An answering call to Maya's awakening, carrying notes of challenge and promise in equal measure. The other packs had heard her song. Damien's hand found hers, their mate bond stronger now than ever, reinforced by the power of the trials and the acceptance of their people. "Together?" he asked. "Always," Maya replied. Above them, the full moon bathed the amphitheater in silver light, blessing the pack's new Luna as she stepped fully into her destiny. The waitress from Seattle was gone forever. In her place stood Maya Silvermoon, Luna Prima, protector of the pack, keeper of the ancient ways, and the most dangerous woman in the shifter world. She was exactly where she belonged. Epilogue. 6 months later. Maya stood on the cabin's porch, watching the sun set over their territory while her hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach. The pregnancy was barely a month along, but her enhanced senses had detected the change immediately. The pack was thriving under her leadership. The challenges Elena had predicted had indeed come. 3 different alphas testing their borders, a group of hunters who'd gotten too close to their secrets, political maneuverings from the larger shifter community that required careful negotiation. Maya had handled them all with the wisdom of her ancestors and the strength of her awakened abilities. "Thinking deep thoughts, my Luna?" Damien asked, emerging from the cabin to wrap his arms around her from behind. "Thinking about the future," she replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. "About the children we'll have, the pack we'll build, the legacy we'll leave behind." Through their mate bond, she felt his sharp spike of joy as he caught the implications of her words. His hands moved to cover hers over their unborn child. "A pup?" he whispered, wonder in his voice. "A pup," she confirmed. "With Luna Prima bloodline and alpha strength. The first of the next generation." In the distance, their pack members were gathering for the evening meal. Families with children, elders sharing stories, young adults planning their futures. All of them safe, all of them thriving under the protection of their Luna and Alpha. Maya smiled as she watched them, knowing with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. She was no longer the lost girl who'd served tables to pay rent. She was Maya Silvermoon, Luna Prima of the Seattle pack. Mate to the man she loved, mother to the next generation of their bloodline. She was finally, completely, utterly home.